went over to Costa Rica, an ayahuasca retreat.
Oh, you went down that road?
Yeah.
Right, let's go there right now.
Next thing, I was like closing my eyes and drifting off and going places in my mind. You know, it's almost like you've got different doorways to go down. The doorway opened and all of a sudden found myself as the 10-year-old boy.
Before we dive in, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. And on that matrix you've just opened up, let's talk about ayahuasca then. Yeah.
God, yeah.
I'm fascinated about this. I considered it a few years ago. I decided not to do it. Tell us your experience.
Yeah, I mean, for me...
And why did you do it?
Why did I do it? Because I did it for... There was a few reasons. I just know how my life works. And, you know, some people would call coincidences, the way things work in my life. Because I have got my shit together and I feel I am aligned now, I know as soon as I put something out there, it will come to me if it's the right thing. And I can remember I had a former girlfriend when I was living out in Australia. She was a psychologist, thank God, because that saved me a fortune.
Free therapy, that's a good strategy. Yeah.
So she's, you know, I was still in touch with Nat, and she was getting into looking at sort of those type of therapies, ayahuasca, DMT for PTSD.
Oh wow, yeah.
And having amazing success. And she kept saying, look, you need to have a look at this. So anyway, I kind of, and I was very intrigued by that as well. I mean, someone telling me that, you know, we don't use all of the capacity of our brain, et cetera, et cetera. There is so much more, many more depths to it. And ayahuasca is the release for that, was something that compels me massively. I'll have to say that the point I decided to go and take ayahuasca, it wasn't because I knew there was a massive problem or it wasn't about, because I was in a half decent place. But I still know that you know, I had massive childhood trauma from the Chimp attack and all that kind of thing. So it's something I've never dealt with. Something I've never dealt with is the Chimp attack. And you know, what we do when it comes to traumatic events, I mean, childhood trauma is the worst trauma, well, some of the worst trauma that's out there. Because it's so deep-seated, and what we naturally do as a defense mechanism, we lock that away. You know, that's a survival technique that we're wired to have. We lock that intimate trauma away. That's okay in the first instant because it gets you over that hurdle initially, but you can't keep it locked away. You've got to deal with it at some point. If you don't deal with it, it's gonna, you know, I look back now and that Chimp attack is responsible for so much of my life, so many, you know, the destructive parts of my life, you know, probably a lot of good parts as well, but, you know, it had massive influence on my life and I'd never dealt with it. And, you know, I talked about it in Breakpoint when I actually came back, and it was almost, I bumped into a guy that I used to serve with who was over in Afghanistan, and they was trying to get vehicles, couldn't get them, and he ended up bumping into this guy. I think we talked about this on the last podcast. You know, he bumped into this guy that wouldn't give him the vehicles out in Afghanistan, and then he asked if he knew a guy called Ollie Ollerton, and he's like, Ollie's my best mate. So, and he asked this guy, you know, this is some 30 years later, I asked this guy, how do you know Ollie? And he was like, oh, well, he got bit by a chimp. When we were kids together. So anyway, that led into a further conversation. They got given all the vehicles because of that situation. But for me, when he came back and told me that, I look back now and I think that was a reminder for me to tell me there was unfinished business. Right, yeah. That was the thing for me. I was like, what, you know, because I think it's so important that we do that. When we meet anyone, when I meet you, when I meet yourself, Rob, when I meet anyone down the street, I ask myself straight away, I don't just brush it off. Why did I meet that person? I analyse that situation. Why did that situation just happen? Is there anything? Sometimes there's not. Yeah. But is there something to take from that? Because I don't believe in coincidence. There is no such thing as coincidence. Yeah. You know, and some of these things happen in your life, and you brush it off with coincidence. I don't do that anymore. You know, I look at it and why has that happened? And that for me was there's unfinished business. So. When the whole thing, I put it out there, you know, I wanted to look into going to try ayahuasca. All of a sudden on Instagram, a company, an organization called the Heroic Hearts Project, which is a US-based company, got in touch and said, Ollie, do you want to come? Would you be interested in coming on an ayahuasca retreat to Costa Rica? And I was just like, Thanks. I'm just in London over the next couple of days from the US. Can you meet up? Fortunately, I was in London that 2 days, which is, not a regular occurrence. So all the stars were lining up, so to speak. Met him, and that was it. I was on my way to Costa Rica with a load of other veterans from all over the world. Some with very deep and dark stories. Yeah. And, so really for me, I wanted to go out there, experience. I wanted to see what it could do for me. Self-improvement, and development. A lot of people only find it because something really bad has happened in their life. So, they've reached rock bottom, which happened for me. And that's when they find it. And the problem I'd made in the past with that, because it's not the first time, there was a monumental, hitting rock bottom. But I'd hit rock bottom before. Then you sort of start to improve. You get to a plateau of feeling okay, and you're like, I don't need that anymore. You stop. And then all of a sudden, it's a roller coaster. You're back into it. Self-improvement, self-development is a constant. Yeah. You can't think it's just something, it's not like a fad diet. Oh, I'll just do a bit here, do a bit there when it's needed. You've got to remain constant with it. And if you choose not to, then when you start querying and asking questions why you're having issues further down the track, and that's the reason why. Yeah. Because you're not investing in this. Yeah. Regardless of how much you train in the gym, etc., this is where you need to do the gym work. Mm. So anyway, for me going out there, it was about spreading that message. This experience, how can I get that out there to other people that need it? Through me experiencing it, I think it's like everything I do. It's like why I used to do a lot of the stunts on SAS, because I don't want to stand there gobbing off about what people have to do. I'll lead by example and do it. Yeah. And that was very much ayahuasca for me. So we went over there, Costa Rica, an amazing place called Soltara, and we were there for 9 days, and I think there was 4 ceremonies, which was interesting. The first day you do a thing called purging. So that's really about cleansing the system. I think it's not lime. It's it's what's the bamboo, lemon, lime. Use it in Asian cooking.
I can't even fry an egg, mate.
That's funny. It'll come back to me anyway. But basically, you drink this stuff until you make yourself sick of it. You just keep on drinking and drinking and drinking. It's called purging. And then you bring up everything that's in your stomach. You're supposed to, before you go on to an ayahuasca retreat, you stop having sex for 2 weeks before, at least 2 weeks before.
No way am I doing that.
Yeah, I know, that's turned off about 80% of the market. Oh no, that was hard. But if you drink, you've got to stop drinking. You've got to go in there extremely cleansed before you can actually take that ayahuasca, because you've got to get to get the most from it, and also because of the health. It can be dangerous if you, not the sex bit, but your diet especially. So there's a lot of prep. You go there, then you purge, and then you go into your first ceremony. And I can remember, at the end of the day, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a hallucinogenic, highly hallucinogenic. And we sat in this big place called a Maloka. We met all the other veterans, and everyone sort of got their own the mats. We did the first one. It's open, so it's right in the jungle. And you're in this Maloka, and you've got the shaman that are in the middle. You go up and you go to the shaman. You actually say, you have to have an intention. You meet the shaman beforehand. They say, what do you want to achieve from this? And I went and said, look, I want to make sure that I don't, because one thing for me, I am scared of the person I used to be.
Who is that person?
Someone that is totally destructive and has no compassion or care for anything. And that, when I was drinking heavily and just bouncing all over the world, just creating mayhem, that was the person I don't ever want to be again. So I just want to make sure that is ready. If something, I don't think it was, but I was scrabbling, sort of scratching for something that meant something. It was like to get away from that self-destruct button. I don't even want to know where it is. So I sort of said, look, I want to make sure that self-destruct button is never there again, and I can never go. And also, I'd like, I think there's some unfinished business with the Chimp, and I never thought I'd ever, that was just, that's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah.
So anyway, we went into that first session. The first session, they just give you a taster. They want to sort of judge where everyone's at. So for me, I was quite deflated on that first one. I was like, yeah, I felt something, but wasn't quite sure. So the next day they upped the dose. holy shit. Holy shit. And it, you know, straight away, you know, I was sat bolt upright. You know, you can lie down, but I was sat bolt upright, and I was in very much a similar position to this now. And then all the geometry starts, and just the whole place changes, the noises and everything, and it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Your senses, you become alive. You can hear noises that you couldn't hear, you know, from the jungle. You can hear all the animals, you can hear everything, you can hear every leaf moving. It is just incredible. It's so powerful. And when I look back now, it is comical. You know, initially I wanted to bring the film crew out to do, and I'm so glad I never. Because this is like I always stood there on, you know, I sat there on the mat, and then next thing I was like closing my eyes and drifting off and going places in my mind. You know, it's almost like you've got different doorways to go down, and there was like some things I didn't want to, you know, they were too heavy to deal with. But, you know, a doorway opened, and all of a sudden I found myself as the 10-year-old boy.
Wow.
10-year-old boy in the circus ground with the chimp in front of me. And I was actually I could feel it was so real, it was unbelievable. And I could see the chimp in front of me, the baby chimp. And I thought, oh shit, I could feel how powerful this was. And one thing which is a really hard thing for people like us, especially in the military and for humans in general, is surrender. It's just not a word that we're accustomed to accepting. But one thing with ayahuasca, you have to surrender to it, stop fighting it. You know, when I eventually sort of allowed it just to start flowing, I allowed the scenario to play out in my mind. It was all in my mind, and you know, and I thought, oh God, I'm about to get attacked.
Did you know it was in your mind? Did you have a perception that it wasn't real, or was it just like it was real?
It was like it was real. Yeah. It was absolutely like it was real. And even if not, you know, what is the difference?
Yeah.
I just didn't see, you know, the reality, and there was no sort of.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. Yeah. There was no. It's a good question, but it didn't. It felt. It's like you could not escape from it. You can't escape from it. Once you know, if you try and fight it, it just turns into a very traumatic event. That's how I perceive it anyway. But I became that 10-year-old boy at the circus that day, and I was like thinking, fuck, I'm going back to the, you know, I was like blown away by it. And I can remember looking down at the chimp, and then next thing I heard the roar that I heard at 10 years old. You know, the roar of the animal, the mother of this baby chimp. And straight away I looked in the background in the darkness, and there was the chimp. And I thought, shit, I'm going to get attacked now. You know, this is all happening. I felt every emotion and everything. You know, I could feel the hair on my head. It was just like in that moment. And then suddenly I looked at the chimp, and it was so bizarre. I started looking at the chimp, and the more I looked at the chimp, you're going to laugh at this, I became the chimp.
Right. Wow.
And before I knew it, honestly, I was on my mat in the Maloka, and I'd come off the mat. I was right on the edge, and I stood up like this, and then I'm like that, and I'm going fuck, and I'm trying to fight it, and then I'm saying don't fight it, just allow it to go, and I'm like it was crazy. I was going in my, you know, like sort of your conscience was saying, oh, you're becoming it was bizarre. Before I know it, I was becoming the chimp, and I looked down at my arms and went, oh my fucking God, this is ridiculous.
We should have had the film crew. That'd have been great.
It was ridiculous. I'm there, and I'm like, and it's before I knew it, I'm in the chimp, and honestly, I could feel where it was that real. I could feel where the chimp had been lying down, lazing in the sunny afternoon. I could feel the leaves dropping off my back, where the leaves and all the stuff from the floor was just dropping off my back, and then all the hairs. I could feel all the hairs all over my body all coming out.
Wow.
And it was just mad. It was almost like this sort of, like going into attack mode. You know, but then I looked, it was crazy. I looked through the chimp's eyes, and it was like a cyber chimp. You know, it was almost like, you know, when you see Terminator, it's got all the red readout and, you know, I was looking at me then, and I was stood there as a 10-year-old boy, and it was threat. And it was just, I was going through that whole war, you know, getting ready for war, and I was actually in the Maloka, people told me afterwards, you were there and you were roaring like as the chimp, like mega vocal, yeah. And I was ready to attack me.
Right.
But then that took me, you know, I thought all that was going to happen, and one thing that I was really fighting against out of anything, I was accepting it, but I was fighting against that attack. I wouldn't allow it in. I would not allow it in. So it kind of diverted, that experience diverted a bit, and it started then. I've always gone on about that situation being I'm the victim, and this is what we do, don't we, as humans? I'm the victim, poor me, I was there, and da-da-da-da-da-da. All of a sudden, I was the chimp. I entered the chimp's arena that day. It didn't ask me to turn up. And all of a sudden, I started to feel massive compassion for that animal. I then it took me out of being the victim, which really has helped me massively. It took me out from being the victim and allowed me to be part of the environment as opposed to being the focus of it. And it really helped me understand that this creature was doing what any creature, whether it's human or whatever, is always going to do, protect its young. You know, I was the alien, I was the one that was in the wrong that day. And that whole situation, that whole experience, that first ayahuasca experience was that moment when it was just like compassion. It was all compassion, compassion, compassion. But that then led me into all aspects of my life, everything, that whole experience. You know, I didn't go into the attack, I managed to fight that off, I didn't want to go there. And that has always been the problem. That's where I needed to deal with. And then that took me out of that situation. I started then thinking about all the people that I love and the people around me, my wife, and the fact that she's got a little boy. And regardless of the business, and I put a lot of pressure on her in the past, regardless of the business, regardless of everything, regardless of me, William is her number one priority. And I started having so much more compassion for that, you know, where I've probably been a bit complacent and not, you know, kind of brushed that off in the past. You know, I'm always putting pressure, what have you done today, you know. And it really gave me a slap round the face. Yeah. Big time. So that was that first experience. Then we went into a second experience. No, sorry, this was then the third one, the next night. And the one thing that I thought, you know, we talk, you then have you have a massive debrief. It goes on for hours with everyone's experiences, which is great. It's great to hear other people's stories. And then that night we went back in. I thought, my work's done with the chimp. I'm still in my head avoiding the trauma. Yeah. I'm avoiding that intimate trauma, which I need to deal with. I don't want to go back there. I don't want to do it. Ayahuasca will go where it's needed, not where you want it. Yeah. So that night, straight back in, you know, I went and saw the shaman, and I said, look, I want to give me a little bit more tonight. And I asked, he said, you've got to say before you take the ayahuasca what you want to achieve, what, you know, and I said, thank you for this drink, blah, blah, blah. And I want to, please, ayahuasca, give me the direction of where I need to go in my life. And again, I'm diverting from where I needed to go. Ayahuasca's like that. Yeah, you take that. I'll show you where you need to go. So anyway, there I am again. I'm like straight back in. Wow. Straight back into the 10-year-old boy. And the thing I'd been steering away from trying to deal with is that intimate attack. And it happened. That intimate attack, yeah. And it was not nice. It was pretty shocking, to be honest, because I went through every emotion. You know, I've looked back on that experience, and that's what our bodies learn to do. That's what our minds learn to do. We close off that intimate trauma. I felt that trauma. You know, it wasn't, you know, that experience when I look back prior to ayahuasca was the fact that I had a fight with a chimp. I just had a fight with a chimp, nothing really. I was in that experience, and I actually went back to what happened. What happened in that moment, I was screaming, I was terrified, I was shouting for my parents, mum and dad, whatever. I was going to die. And I went through that emotion, I went back through that emotion. And I can remember in that moment, I then was fighting and, you know, fighting against this chimp. And then all of a sudden my head said, what would happen if you'd not fought that day? And this will sound quite out there to some people, but this is the power of ayahuasca. In that moment, I stopped fighting. And I lay down and I died in that moment. I can always remember that. I lay down, I can remember opening my eyes, and I saw my wife there, lay next to me, and I stroked her face and said, everything's going to be okay, come with me. And then I went into the afterlife, call it whatever you want, and it was absolute heaven. It was like the noise and everything. I then became spirit and not a physical being, and it was unbelievable. I didn't want to leave there. But I did. I came back out. And then I sort of went back into I had the experience of the attack that had gone through, that had finished. And then you start to have this massive reflection, it's reflection about the situation, everything that's just happened. And for me, I was like, it was, Ollie, stop fighting. And I realized since that experience as a 10-year-old boy, I've been fighting all my life. And I don't mean in wars, I don't mean in the military, I've been fighting. Relationships, authority, everything I've been fighting, and it was stop fighting. It was such a powerful experience for me. There was so much that got resolved. And then, also as part of that reflection over the 2 sessions, those 2 major sessions, like you have, I call it, the first one is getting on board the plane. Yeah. The two in the middle, mid-flight, and then the last one is they bring the plane down to land. And so those 2 sessions for me, massive amount of that was reflection on us as human beings, how much energy, and this is fueled by social media, how much energy we put into being someone we're not. We're building the perception, we put so much energy into that person, the perception of someone that we want everyone else to see that is something of perfection. Everyone's out there to some degree, some more than others, faking perfection. We become the byproduct of the person we've created. And that is a dangerous place to be. You've got to really pull yourself back from that. The person in the corner crying, that's the real you. But people are quite happy to compromise their own well-being, their own health in some circumstances, extreme circumstances, to make sure the picture looks attractive. We put so much energy, everything into that. And I think that there's a level of that. But again, like we talked about ego before, you've got to manage that. There'll always be the same for me, but throughout my books and everything, I'm as honest as I can be. When I do stuff on Instagram now, I don't do it because I think, this makes me laugh as well. A lot of people, I go outdoors a lot, and there is an element I've had to sort of really control it. We start getting to this sort of modus operandi of how will this look for social media? People are doing stuff for social media because it's creating content as opposed to enjoying it. People need to really start to create that separation between what's real and what's not. And I think if you get lost in that world and we end up living through our phones, we're not going to be a happy person when we're on our deathbed. People have seen those clips, seen about people on their deathbeds wishing they'd have done something different. Don't be that person. And I think we really need to have some kind of mind management program to make sure that we're maximizing our potential. I know I detracted a little bit there.
That's all right. That's question 1. I was really in that. Yeah. I was really in that experience. So thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Now, if you like this, we have a full, deep interview, the uncut, unedited version. So if you want to watch that, the link is below. But first, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel.